The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show, and I'm so delighted to have Tovah Feldshuh back on my show. It was a long time ago that I interviewed her, and she was amazing. Now, today, I want everybody to know that Tovah Feldshuh is a Broadway actor. She's a film star. She's on television in so many different series, and she is amazing. And so now let's get involved and talk a little bit about your return to Club 54 and why you decided to play at Meisner Park, Leona. Why Leona? Where did that come from?
I was offered a Broadway musical, a Broadway-bound musical that hasn't hit Broadway yet, called The Queen of Mean. But I was so enamored of the people with whom I was working, Ron Passaro, composer, Alex Lippert, and David Lee, lyricist and book, that I said to them, until you get your $13 million for your musical, why don't you give me the rights to put parts or whatever I can of your marvelous score in an act that I will write with the incredible director and performer Jeff Harner and my remarkable Renaissance musical director, James Bossi. I will collaborate with them and write a 70-minute nightclub act, 70 to 75, which is really, really a blend of theater and cabaret about Leona Helmsley coming back for 60 minutes from purgatory to set the record straight and sing a few show tunes.
Leona was quite a character, and people always called her the Queen of Mean. In your investigation of her and trying to play her part, was she really mean?
She had tremendously high standards, and when you didn't hit her standard for the third time, it was difficult for her, and she would call you out on it. We just finished 6 performances at the Meisner Park Cultural Center and the Delray Beach Playhouse, and I'm thrilled to share with your many fans, Susan, that we sold out that run. So Kevin Barrett, the impresario and executive producer of the Meisner Park Cultural Center, has invited me back with James Bossi, my musical director, for 4 more performances, Saturday, March 28th, and Sunday, March 29th. That's 3 and 8 on March 28th, and 2 and 7, March 29th. So anybody in the Boca Raton area who couldn't get into the show the first time or who would like to come see it again, I will be back March 28th and 29th to do 4 shows in 24 hours. Very, very, very exciting.
You played many, many parts, a lot of dramatic parts. And in this, you're playing, of course, Leona, but it's a musical. Now, I am curious, what do you prefer? Do you prefer musicals to dramas, to suspense things? What's the favorite thing that you like to do?
Just a great role, a great role. I was just offered a part about a woman who plays many, many different roles in a dressing room of Lomans. And I said, look, I'll look at this piece. It's the leading role, so that answers that criteria, but it better be great, because if it's not great, I'm not going to take it. Particularly, I'm in now, I hope, only the last third of my life, but I'm in the last third of my life. And my time is the most precious thing I have, so I don't spend it in anything that I don't love. I try not to spend it. I have a wonderful, phenomenal manager named Michael Adler and fabulous agents at the Abrams Agency and at UTA. And so, as I say to myself, I always do one for me, and then I try to do one for them. So I do keep working, but I try to only take that which I love, which brings me to being invited back to 54 Below here at 54th between Broadway and 8th, February 6th, 7th, and 8th, which is just in 10 days. It's Thursday, February 6th, Friday the 7th, February 8th, on Saturday, all at 7 p.m. to do my other nightclub act, which is called Aging is Optional, because God, I hope it is. And it starts out with a song by Dar Williams. I won't forget when Peter Pan came to my house, took my hand. I said I was a boy. I'm glad he didn't. Check. So it all has to do with childhood and quantum jumps of time and the elements of a life of wisdom where you've been around for 6 decades, and how you continually and happily visit and revisit certain moments of your childhood, not just in your memory, but experientially. I talk about Barry Weissler and Fran Weissler inviting me to join the cast of Pippin and do a full-out trapeze act. And I happened to have a swing set in the backyard at Scarsdale, where I grew up. And there were 2 swings, a pedal pusher that you did with your best friend, and a trapeze. 2 metal chains with a red metal bar. And I would hang upside down on that metal bar in my brother's hand-me-down shorts in the summer and my forest green snowsuit in the winter by the time I was 3 years old. So when Barry Weissler asked me to get up on the trapeze 30 feet in the air without a harness, without net, and without insurance, and he said, "Are you scared, scared, scared?" And I said, "No, are you?" I wasn't scared because it brought me back to that moment in my early life when I hung from the trapeze in my backyard.
What is it about Tovah? I remember when I interviewed you last time, you were going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And I said to myself, this woman, she's amazing, because I got to tell you something. If you're not in good shape, that is one of the most difficult things. And now you're swinging around. What is it about Tovah that has all this energy? Where did it come from?
It's the love of life, and a couple of really good parents, one who lived to over 103 and one who lived to 86. And my father used to say, if you cut a sweat and you pee in your poop, where can disease land? If you cut a sweat and you pee in your poop, where can disease? And I bought that myth. So I do some kind of exercise every day, Pilates, or I have to actually go to physical therapy because I was a runner for 40 years. So I strengthen my knees and make sure my lower back is still very flexible. And I went to the Sing Sing this year in New Guinea, and I'm going to go to Ethiopia this coming year. So I'm still going. I'm still looking at the planet Earth and staying away from war zones. It's quite a statement when you can say Ethiopia is one of the safer places to visit, but that's
I got to ask you, is it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to put yourself in harm's way, Tovah.
No, and there's a chemical war going on because of the Russians in Syria, a frightening, inhumane thing, and you don't want to be, unfortunately, in that area either. My heart goes out to the Syrian people. My heart goes out.
Tell us your process in putting together these one-woman shows, and does it take a lot of effort?
It takes effort and money. You have to have, I always like to have enough of a living to have freedom. I don't need to buy a plane, but I need to be able to buy a ticket on a plane. I keep my eye on that ball too, whether it's in investing my money or having good financial advisors. I just don't put it under a mattress. So the answer to doing a one-woman show is it enabled me to control my career and be a good mother and make sure my children learned to read and were well educated, both of whom were. And it's of great satisfaction to me and my husband of 43 years, Andrew Harris Levy, who's a learned man in and of himself. So the one-woman show was that vehicle to both be a mother and a prime artist, because you're up there on your own and you're memorizing 90 minutes of material when you're doing, let's say, William Gibson's Golda Meir. But you're also able to tell a wonderful producer like Dave Fishelson saying, my daughter graduates from her school in Switzerland on this date in February. Can we change the playing schedule that week? And of course they say yes. Immediately they say yes. So I can still do 8 shows a week, but you put a Thursday matinee in so I can get out of town Friday to go to Switzerland to enjoy her ceremony and pick her up and bring her home.
The other question I have for you, Tovah, is today we're listening to a lot of different critics talking about shows. And one of the shows that they're talking about is Hamilton. It seems to generate like $2,500 for a ticket. With that said, I wonder, how do you feel about rap music? Because that's what they use in that show. And I'm wondering why people admire it so much. And I'm curious about how you feel about it.
Well, I think the reason it was such a tremendous hit is because it's so innovative. Not unlike Chorus Line, not unlike Oklahoma. Oklahoma was one of our first musicals where when you could no longer speak, you sang. So it wasn't opera, and it wasn't comic light opera, and it wasn't vaudeville. There was a reason that Curly comes out, and this is at the end of the war. Don't forget, Oklahoma welcomed our troops back home, our Homa. Curly comes out and he looks at the dawn and he goes, oh, oh, oh my God. Oh, oh, he's looking at the sun coming up. Oh, 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 what a beautiful morning. So it comes from a stimuli that are outside the body. Likewise, with Chorus Line that skinned a new cat on how to look at a musical and feature the people who were in the chorus, to stop the clock and the spotlight on these human beings and their huge metaphoric lives that applied to all of us. So now we're at Hamilton, at American history. And what better way to study American history, particularly with the marvelous polyglot of ethnicities we have in America, with our marvelous Spanish citizens, our African-American citizens, the mixture of blood that gives us extremely interesting contemporary music, that we have a rap artist, who's who's from Puerto Rico, has the soul of an angel. I think he married a Jewish girl. I'm not sure. I think he married outside of his particular ethnic background. And he is able to poetically and in rhythm depict the rise and the tragedy of Alexander Hamilton. So that now it is common knowledge. We all know what that is about at that point in history. I was at the Supreme Court yesterday visiting Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And when I came across anything with Alexander Hamilton, I knew all about it because it was still fresh in my mind. I had the honor of seeing Lin-Manuel's production in the public theater, in the small theater. And I never got over it. I never got over it.
Well, it leads me to asking you mentioned shows like Oklahoma, Carousel, My Fair Lady.
I didn't mention,
the list goes on and on and on.
I didn't mention Carousel. I mentioned Oklahoma, Chorus Line, and Hamilton, all of which because they broke form. They broke through to a new way of looking at the American musical.
But as I said before, these shows that we heard when we were kids, you could always remember the words. You could always remember the songs. And, when you left there, you just felt so good. And I'm wondering, the shows that we see today, do you remember any of the words? I find it very hard.
Depends. We're also in a different world. We're in a planetary crisis. We're in a crisis with the government, a huge crisis with the government, with corruption in the executive branch and a hard partisanship in the Senate, so that men of moral rectitude from the Republican Party feel muted to come forth, which they so need to do. And it's a dark world. And if you don't believe me, go see the new production of Oklahoma that's playing at Circle in the Square. I mean, that's about as dark as you can get. But it's a new way to see Oklahoma. Whether you'll enjoy it or not is something else. But it's mind-bending, the way David Cromer reconceived the production and what he says about America through that production. Some of the stuff I remember, some of it I don't. But we weren't born, or at least I wasn't born in the rap era. I was a big-time adult, a mother of grown children by the time rap was wrapping itself around my mentality. I do a little bit of rap as Leona, and I'm just putting together a rap for RBG. I had the honor of playing the Supreme Court Justice in October of this year in Los Angeles, in a very successful run of a play by Jonathan Shapiro called Sisters-in-Law, that dealt with RBG's relationship with Sandra Day O'Connor, the two women on the Supreme Court, the two first women on the Supreme Court who, quote, changed the world, according to Linda Hirschman, the writer of the book upon which the play is based. And I'm going to do a unit in Aging is Optional on Justice Ginsburg, because God knows she defines chronology. She absolutely defies it. She is now cancer-free. I was with her yesterday. Not only is she chic, but she is alert like a laser beam. And
she has all the marbles, is what you're telling me. This is interesting that you mentioned getting together with these people. Do you do research? How do you develop your part in a play like 54 Below, and of course all the other shows that you do, and the TV and all the films? Does it take a lot of research? Does it take a lot of time? What's involved?
Well, it depends how good you want to make it. First, you got to make it accurate, then you got to make it excellent, then you got to make it effortless. So the camera hates a liar. So It's very important to be effortless on camera and masterful. So I do whatever it takes to get to that point. And, for some people it takes 20 hours. For me, it may take 40 hours, whatever it takes. I put the time in as much as I can. In television, you better have your stuff ready very fast. I work very hard and very long hours before I go to shoot because there's no time on set. In something like what we're bringing to 54 Below, this is a return engagement, thank God. So I've done 85% of the engagement before, but we're shining it up. We're changing the order. We're making it better. We're in full out rehearsal because I want to show up the way people depend on me to show up, which is, I hope, as an excellent performer whom they can depend on, whose work they can depend on for a good night in live or in cinematic entertainment.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just curious, who are your favorite actors that you enjoyed working with? Because you probably have worked with so many, and I'm sure all of them are great, but there must be a particular one that stands out in your head.
well, usually the greater the transformation, the greater the actor gets credit. So right off the top of my head, people I have worked with like Meryl Streep, who probably is one of the great character actresses of the century. Likewise, Emma Stone is excellent, and I have not worked with her. Likewise, Christian Bale is beyond belief in most of his work. He's wonderful. And then there are people like Julia Roberts who have evolved into a truthometer in front of the camera. She just is excellent. But in terms of my personal, other than Meryl, with whom I have worked and much admired, I love Rachel Bloom. I think she's a genius. She was able to write her own television series, star in it, and whip off these musical numbers. Now she's writing with Fran Drescher the musical of The Nanny, with her collaborator Adam Schlesinger, with whom she wrote on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. But I loved playing her mother. That was a very easy task. And the other actors, Christopher Plummer has been a great inspiration to me. Just trying to think of some of the great and some lesser known actors that I have worked with. Just because they're unknown, it doesn't mean they're not fabulous. Stephanie Faracy as Sandra Day O'Connor, with whom I worked in Los Angeles, was fantastic and very, very well known in her community. I'm just trying to think. The great directors of my life, Sidney Lumet, Scott Schwartz, who directed me in Golda, Arsenic and Old Lace, and in this fabulous play by Wade Dooley called The Prompter, of a diva returning to Broadway after 40 years who can't remember her lines, and so she has to have an earpiece, and it's her relationship with this prompter. And it was written by the boy who actually was the prompter to a great diva on Broadway who won the Tony with this earpiece in her ear. She still won the Tony, so it's a wild story. I've had wonderful, the good fortune to work with wonderful people. Liz Kruger, Craig Shapiro, the people who put me in Salvation as President of the United States. With The Walking Dead, to work with Andrew Lincoln on film was a great privilege. He's a fantastic film actor. And everybody, when you're around Andrew Lincoln, everybody's work gets better. So yeah, it's been a good ride. It's a good ride.
It sounds like it's a wonderful ride, actually. But when you kind of experience film or you experience TV, of all of the different scenarios that I can think of that you talked about just before, I'm curious, which platform? Is it film? Is it stage? Is it TV? Which one do you enjoy the most?
I just want a great role. I want a great role. Of course, I came to television and film in my 20s. I came to theater, by the time I was 3 years old, I was making faces in front of the mirror. Then I toured my show to the bathroom, and then I took it to a loving public. My parents, I was a pianist as a child, and I loved to sing and dance. And I would, I sang and did whatever at my brother's bar mitzvah. So I was 7 years old then. So I've been in live entertainment longer than I've been in anything with film, but I enjoy a great role. And likewise, I don't like to take anything that is not a terrific part. So.
Mm-hmm. Are there any interesting anecdotes about some of the celebrities that you've worked with? I'm just curious if you've had some interesting things happen that you can tell our audience about.
Well, I was making my debut on Broadway at the Palace Theater in 1973 with 14 lines in a red dress in Cyrano de Bergerac starring Christopher Plummer. It was the Anthony Burgess translation, and it was a musical, and it was a thrilling piece for me because I was picked up by an agent from that chorus line, from those 14 lines in the red dress. Maybe it was red dress, and 18 months later I was on the marquee at the O'Neill Theater in Yentl. So my whole career was catapulted when I came to New York as a young actor, which I didn't expect. So to make a long story short, there was a fabulous character actor named Arnold Sobolov, and he walked on stage. I think he played Théophraste Renaudot, a major critic of Cyrano's, of Montfleury's play, a major critic, like a New York Times critic of the play within a play that we were doing. He came on with his mustache. Half his mustache fell off on the stage in front of the entire sold-out house at the Palace. He picked up the half. He put it back on his face and he said, "A disease I caught in the war." I'll never forget that. I thought we were going to pee in our pants. It was so funny. We were shaking. And so every time I watch Carol Burnett and Friends with these classic, extraordinary comedy skits that are live, it is, and I see Harvey or one of the comedians going up and breaking, I think of that moment on stage with Plummer and in Cyrano way back in 1973 when I first came to New York.
Amazing. Your memory is incredible. I don't
you.
remember what I did yesterday, no less in 1973. But with that said, you know, people think that these stars, the ones, perhaps some of the ones that you even mentioned, and of course, the others that are in shows and plays and TV, they think they're like unbelievably special, unique. But truthfully, aren't they just human?
Well, yeah. The most human of all is the greatest of them all, which is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. If you look at the RBG documentary, which was nominated for the Academy Award, and rightfully so, this woman is exactly like she is in the documentary. She's just the real thing. Humble, modest, brilliant, careful, thoughtful. She's just one of us. And I remember having the honor, the pleasure, I should say, of meeting Julia Roberts. She did a play on Broadway. I was at her opening night. I think she came to the premiere night party barefoot. But she said one of the great advantages of being a star was that she had all this stuff sent to her for free, and she couldn't get over it. She was funny. She's queen of the close-up. Really, really nice person, very down to earth, very accessible. I think some of your best actors are like that. They're very, very decent people. George Clooney is extraordinarily kind. Every time I see him, he always talks about how much Rosemary Clooney, his aunt, loved me. You know, he always makes it about you. Elie Wiesel makes it about you, not about himself. So I think that's very telling about certain worldly souls that are more empathic than they are self-centered.
That's very interesting.
And then we have the President of the United States. So there you go. Yeah, that's the other end of the spectrum.
Well, I always like my guests to have the last word, and I'm sure you have a lot to tell our audience, and I want you to leave them with something that they can say, this is a special woman who's done special things, and I'm looking forward to seeing the new things that she's doing. So give us the last word, Tovah.
As my grandma Ada said to me, if you reach for the stars, you may land on the roof. If you reach for the roof, you'll never get off the ground. So I invite everyone who's listening, with the love in my heart for all living beings, to reach for the stars, reach for your highest self, and reach for your highest achievements, and do it with your humanity.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, tell the audience also when they can see you, what shows you're going to be in, and what they have to look forward to.
Well, any minute I'm going to be at 54 Below. That's between Broadway and 8th Avenue. It's right under Studio 54, of great fame back in the era of the beautiful people of Andy Warhol. I will be doing my nightclub act. Aging is optional, because God, I hope it is. And it's hilarious and deals with jumping back and forth to childhood and adulthood in order to maintain our youth no matter what. And if you go on www.54below.com, You can buy tickets easily. You just go right to Feinstein's 54 Below. You go to their calendar. I'm on February 6th, 7th, and 8th, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night here in New York City at 7 p.m. And I would love to share that act with you very, very much. Aging is optional because God, I hope it is. I promise you a big fat laugh in that show. Then on March 28th and 29th, I'll be at the Meisner Park Cultural Center in Boca Raton doing 4 concerts of Tovah is Leona, which features Leona Helmsley coming back from purgatory for 60 minutes to set the record straight and star in her own cabaret. It's in a return engagement based on a sold-out run we had earlier in January, and I'll be back for 4 more performances at the Meisner Park Cultural Center in Boca Raton, in the beautiful Meisner Park cultural area, and that would be at 3 and 8 on Saturday the 28th, and at 2 and 7 p.m. on Sunday the 29th. And that's what I'm doing immediately. I'm also doing a concert with Yitzhak Perlman January 27th at Temple Emmanuel, but we are sold out. So come to the other stuff.
My guest today has been Tovah Feldshuh, who's a Renaissance woman. And I think that it would be incredibly interesting to see you in the show. And I look forward to actually experiencing it myself. And I encourage the audience to listen very carefully to this show so that they can buy tickets for Tovah in all these different venues. So thank you very much, Tovah Feldshuh, for being on the Susan Brender Show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Susan. Pleasure's all mine.